It's episode 45. We're almost up to episode 50. We got to do something big for episode 50.
Yeah, we're getting there, John. We're getting towards the half century.
So 46, 47, 48, 49, 50 will be the 19th of February. We have to do something, yeah. But, you know, this is the exact dull time of sport. There is a 2-week period every year in Australia where there is no sport, really. The rugby league pre-season hasn't started. The AFL pre-season hasn't started. The summer of cricket tests are over.
The tests are over and we've got to put up with ODIs and T20s.
And the Australian Open is over. So for the next 2 weeks, we're just going to sit here and talk about me. Or we could touch on some cricket. There is some cricket. There's the West Indies and there's some always cricket news because we are at a cricket nation. And the Australian Cricket Awards has been announced.
Yeah, John, I can run you through the award winners from last night. So Mitch Marsh, of course, won the Allan Border Medal. Congratulations to him.
He cried.
Yeah,
so nice.
Well done to Mitch Marsh. Great achievement. The Belinda Clark Award went to Ashley Gardner for the Women's Player of the Year. The Shane Warne Men's Test Player of the Year went to Nathan Lyon. Men's ODI Player of the Year was Mitch Marsh as well, so he doubled up there, John. Women's ODI Player of the Year, Elise Perry. Men's T20I Player of the Year, Jason Berendorf. Women's T20I Player of the Year, Elise Perry again. Men's Domestic Cricketer of the Year, Cameron Bancroft, John, our friend who...
that guy who can't get a look in the test squad?
Top scores in the Sheffield Shield, but can't get a look in even when there's a vacancy.
Now Domestic Cricketer of the Year,
yes.
Cameron Bancroft.
You sort of figure, well, what does the award mean if you can't get a look in the test side? Women's Domestic Cricketer of the Year, Sophie Day and Elise Villani. BBL Player of the Tournament, Matt Short, and he's been rewarded. So there are some rewards for these winners, John. Matt Short is in the ODI squad for Australia.
But Cameron Bancroft isn't.
Yeah. Bradman Young Cricketer of the Year, Fergus O'Neill. Betty Wilson Young Cricketer of the Year, Emma DeBro. And Community Impact Award, Ashley Gardner. There you go, John.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's the award winners from the Australian Cricket Awards.
I have a question. How come Pat Cummins didn't win anything if he was the Test Captain of the Year, International Test Captain of the Year, and so he's the best in the world, but not the best in Australia?
Yeah, couldn't get a look in, unfortunately, John. He's been snubbed from these awards. A bit of controversy around the way the awards were presented, John. So the ceremony, it was very short. It was a very short awards night, and it focused only on the Allan Border Medal, the Men's Player of the Year, and the Belinda Clark Award, the Women's Player of the Year. But there was no mention of some of the other awards, John. So Men's Test Player of the Year didn't get a look in. Men's ODI Player of the Year just wasn't featured on the coverage, John. And viewers were a bit sort of perplexed by that, thinking, well, how are these, major awards just not even getting on the coverage at all? I
always wonder why they televise these awards anyway, to be honest. I find them super boring. I've been to awards shows like the Arias and stuff like that, and they're entertaining because they have music acts. And they're also, the Arias, I don't know about now. It was many, many years ago. They're open to the public, so it was at Acer Arena at the time, and I was sitting in the stands, and then down there all the celebrities were having dinner and all that stuff, so on and so forth. But there was also music acts. And then I always look at these like sporting award things, and I just think, I don't really want to watch. Like the Dally M's I don't watch. I watch the Twitter, and so... it's weird to me, the people who want to watch it, to be honest, and if they're complaining about it, like, they're even weirder to me.
John, interestingly, Channel 7 and Fox Cricket, who televised the awards, they actually didn't post about the other awards on social media, so it was as if they wanted people to sort of not be aware that those awards existed, so they didn't compete for it on social media.
Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, it's actually, that's what Twitter was kind of invented for, to tweet out things like award nights, and so you could follow award nights if you weren't watching or weren't there.
Yeah,
and that's the perfect place for them to be tweeting out the winners and not having to televise it.
Yeah.
But it's always about the advertisers, right?
Yeah, John, I've just got a comment to make on this awards night before we move on to our preview of this ODI series coming up. So, John, this awards night used to be called the Allan Border Medal. And in 2019, I know that's a long time ago now, but in 2019, it was changed to be called the Australian Cricket Awards. But we have only been doing this podcast for 6 months or so, so this is our first time we're doing it as these awards are presented. I just think so they've changed it was called the Allan Border Medal the night, and I know that the men's player of the year still gets the Allan Border Medal, but for the night, the name of the night to be changed because they feel like it's not inclusive enough to have it named after a man who's an Australian legend. I think that's just PC nonsense gone mad, John.
It's go work, go broke. Like, all the rest of them don't do it, but, if it's successful for cricket, then you'd expect the others to follow suit. Like, it's the Dally M's.
That's the thing, the Dally M's...
There's only one Dally M award.
The Brownlow in the AFL?
Yeah, it's like, so there's only one Brownlow award, but it's the Brownlows. I mean, it doesn't roll off the tongue like the Allan Borders. Doesn't roll off the tongue like Dally M's and Brownlows, but still, like.
I always thought the AFL was by far the most politically correct sporting code in Australia. I'll tell you what, John. I think Cricket Australia might have overtaken them.
Well, I think Cricket Australia has a lot of players that, there are. When the AFL does their statements and the NRL does their statements about inclusivity, there's very few players that jump on board. But, when cricket does it, the players jump on board. And it seems to me like, cricket is a kind of less Sydney West type people, they're the rich Newington kids or whatever. And it seems a little bit like it's white saviour complex.
For the night to be named after him initially, and then for that to be taken away from him and called the Australian Cricket Awards.
He's still alive, right?
Yeah, of course he is. I just think that's,
There's really no need to rename it.
It's a sad indictment on our society today that they felt like they needed to do that. Yeah. Cricket Australia felt like they needed to do that.
But did anyone complain? Does anyone care? That's my biggest issue with virtue signalling changes. If no one is complaining, why are you changing?
Yeah, this is a legend of the game who scored over 11,000 test runs, played 156 tests, a former Australian captain. He was captain for a very long time.
Of one of the best teams in the history of world cricket.
Yeah, I mean, I think Australia did struggle for a while under Border, but towards the end of his reign, they did start to come into their golden era.
And they set it up for the next era, which was the
Steve Waugh.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the Mark Taylor, then Steve Waugh, Ponting eras. I just needed to mention that, John. This is yet another example of the PC police just going way too far.
That's what, if no one was complaining, why do they even bother thinking about it? Like, you wonder about those marketing is like, where they sit down and, all right, guys, we gotta do our thing, and how can we get a little bit more clout on the internet? I know, we can change the name for no reason.
Who are they trying to impress by doing this? Like you say, no. If the name had been left as it was, nobody bats an eyelid.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a non-issue.
It's not like it was called the Adolf Hitler Awards. It's Allan Border, and like I said,
we're at a point where you can't name something after a man anymore.
Yeah, it's like I said, it doesn't roll off the tongue like the Dally M's or the Brownlows, like the Allan Borders doesn't. So if I was a marketing person in that room, I would have been like, we should change it to something like the Allan B's or the A Borders,
AB medal.
The ABs, something. You gotta have the thing because it's the night. Anyway, I hate that stuff. It's really stupid. It annoys the crap out of me. And I rail against it constantly on social media.
Yes.
And seriously, no one should ever. If I die, please everybody jump into my WhatsApp and delete my history. Because the chat time on Telegram as well. Seriously. But we can move on to the Australia and West Indies ODI preview. I have two questions about this preview of something boring. Do you reckon Steve Smith will open?
Well, I suspect that he probably will, John, because he's the captain, so it's his choice. That's the first point to make. The other point to make is that his reasoning for becoming an opener in the Test side, and he lobbied hard to get that opening spot, and he's now got it in the Test side, his reasoning for that was that he doesn't like to wait around to bat. So if you're thinking about that, you're thinking that he probably will push. Well, he doesn't need to push it. As I said, he's the captain. It's up to him. I think he will open with himself, John. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if it's the right move from a team point of view because he's not a fast scoring batsman.
Yeah, and ODIs, you have less time.
That's the thing. Test opening, it suits his game style because he's got forever to bat, and that's Steve Smith. But in the ODIs, you know, we think back to the days of Adam Gilchrist opening in the ODI side, that fast scoring opener. And he opened with Mark Waugh, but you wouldn't say that. I'd say that Mark Waugh was a more aggressive batsman than what Steve Smith is now. So you had a batsman in Mark Waugh who, you know, he didn't come out and just flay the bowling to all parts like Gilchrist did, but he was an aggressive player, Mark Waugh. And then you couple that with Gilchrist, who was all-out attack with the bat, and you had a really good opening combination. But I just don't know if Steve Smith fits that bill. That having been said, given that it's his choice as captain, I think he will open the bat.
Yeah, and so he remember he stayed behind in India to do that T20 series and opened. I think for one game.
I don't think it worked out.
No, it didn't work at all. No. I think he was out, wasn't he? Maybe it was in the BBL. He got one of the first ball wickets. It was in the BBL when he did open for the Sixers first ball wicket.
Yeah, if I'm looking, and I can read you through the Aussie squad there, John, and then we can talk about some other options. So as we say, Steve Smith's the captain. Sean Abbott, Xavier Bartlett. For some of these, we know who these players are. Some we don't. If we don't, I'll tell you what they do. So Sean Abbott, Xavier Bartlett, he's a fast bowler for anyone who's not aware. Jake Fraser McGurk, he's a batsman. Yeah. Cameron Green, Aaron Hardy. Hardy is an all-rounder. Travis Head, Josh Inglis is the keeper, obviously, with no Alex Carey in the ODIs. Marnus Labuschagne, Lance Morris, who's a fast bowler. Matt Short, as we talked about, BBL Player of the Year. He's a batsman. Will Sutherland, an all-rounder, and he's James Sutherland's son, the old Cricket Australia CEO, and Adam Zampa. So if I'm looking at that squad, John, personally, I would open with... I'd probably go with Matthew Short is an opener, and he's the BBL Player of the Year. I think he's a good fit to open. And I'd probably open with... I'd probably go with maybe Cameron Green to open with Matt Short, and I'd probably go like maybe Smith at number 3 and Labuschagne at number 4 maybe, and then after that I'd have more hitters towards the end of the innings at 5, 6, 7.
That sounds about right. Cameron Green isn't a 4. I think we've established that.
I mean, I was sort of looking around for Mitch Marsh's name, and then I realised that he's not in the squad for whatever reason. If he had been in the squad, I would have had him and Matt Short opening. Yeah. But with no Mitch Marsh there, I'd probably go Matt Short and Cameron Green to open. But I do suspect Smith will open.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that'll be a good idea, but again, it's the West Indies. Shamar Joseph is obviously out.
And we know Shamar Joseph, obviously Australia are the overwhelming favourites for this series.
I don't know if he's out injured or they just don't think he's a...
Yeah, he is out injured, but he wasn't going to play in the ODI.
I would have bumped him in if he, after his performance in the test, I would have just thrown him in for the best guess outcome.
I had that a bit further down, but we might just jump to that now, John. Yeah, so he was going to play in this UAE T20 cricket tournament, but he succumbed to that toe injury he suffered, copping that Yorker on the toe from Mitchell Starc in that test win over Australia at the Gabba, taking 7 for 68. It was a great bowling performance from Joseph. So he's pulled out of this UAE International League. It's called the ILT20. So I think he's gone home to rest now, John.
Yeah, I don't see without him. Like he was a standout performance, and there was no one else mentioned in the tests. I don't see without him them really pushing Aussies. But you never know. Maybe another one-day superstar will emerge from the West Indies in the next. It's 3 games over 6 days, I believe. So
the first ODI is the MCG on Friday. It's a day-nighter. Second ODI at the SCG on Sunday, a day-nighter. Third ODI at Canberra on Tuesday, a day-nighter. So, there you go, John. It's Australia's first ODI series since winning the World Cup. Since losing their first 2 games of the World Cup, Australia's won 9 in a row. So they're on a 9-match winning streak in ODIs, running hot. Australia's won 4 of their last 5 ODIs against the West Indies. Their most recent clash was in July 2021 at Bridgetown, with Australia winning that one by 6 wickets. Now, there's some...
When did they lose?
They lost... I don't have that in front of me, but the ODI before that, they did lose that one. I'm guessing it was probably because Australia didn't pick their best squad in that series. But yeah, so there's some test players out of this squad, John, who I think should probably, you sort of want, I know they need a rest, but, you also need to think about, people's interest in this series. And so no Pat Cummins, no Josh Hazlewood, no Mitchell Starc, no Mitch Marsh. So this is an issue. I think the main issue for the ODIs and the interest levels is Australia just don't pick their best team, and that's weird. And that's why it's hard to get interested.
There's a common theme with Pat Cummins. Like that was one of the conversation points around. If you remember the beginning of the World Cup, people were questioning his captaincy because they lost their opening 2 games. But one of the points that was raised was because he had hardly captained any ODI matches. Like he'd been not captaining many, so obviously he was the Test captain of the year because he captained all the Tests, but he didn't do the Australia ODIs. And now they've moved from a match they've lost, and they're not looking to even recover some pride in the Australian jersey by naming their best team. Like I would want them as an Australian and a cricket fan to name their absolute best team and go wipe the West Indies. To bat their 50 overs and score 460 and then get the West Indies all out for 80. That's what I want. Yeah, because we just lost the Test match to them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I guess they've had a grueling 12 months of Test cricket. They had that tour to India. They had the World Test Championship, the Ashes in England. Obviously, they had the ODI World Cup, and they've just got through a full Test summer in Australia. But yeah, that's an issue to me, John. Cummins, Hazlewood, Starc, Mitch Marsh, not there. You might remember, John, back in 2001-02 when they used to have that try series, that ODI try series where they had 3 teams. And that summer, Australia didn't make the finals, incredibly, in a 3-team competition in their own backyard. They missed the finals. And you might remember Steve Waugh was actually sacked as ODI captain as a result of Australia not making the finals in that summer. But that was when ODI cricket was at that was when it was at its peak. That was when everyone was interested in it. And I think they really missed that try series, John, when it's just 2 teams playing off against each other in an ODI series. It's a real who cares event.
Yeah, especially because it's the West Indies.
Yes.
The interest in the Test series came from the general population after the Test series when Australia lost. It was like, oh.
And that's the thing. All of a sudden, it's Shamar Joseph's performance. The 2 biggest talking points from the Test summer were David Warner's retirement and his sparring with Mitchell Johnson, and Shamar Joseph's performance in that second Test against Australia. And so this cricket summer's had an injection of life at the back end of it, which thanks to Shamar Joseph. And now and I know he's injured, John, but he wasn't going to be playing in this ODI series anyway. He was going to go and play T20s in the UAE. And so that momentum that it's got at this back end of the summer has just been...
Yeah, they just killed it.
Wiped away.
Where's Dave Warner? Has he retired from ODIs?
I think he has, John, because it's a good time for him to retire from ODIs because the World Cup's just finished. He has actually retired from ODIs.
Okay, so
the World
only
Cup's
doing
just
T20s.
finished. He's 37 years old, I believe, David Warner. So he'll be 41 when the next World Cup's on, so there's obviously no way he'll be around for that. So it made total sense for that ODI World Cup to be his farewell.
Yeah.
He did say that if they do need him, he is there as an emergency if they need him any time in the next couple of years. I think he said that the Champions Trophy in 2025, he'd put his hand up if they were battling to find players. But I think he's pretty much done in the ODIs, John.
Yeah, so there's no one in the ODI squad. And, well, there is obviously people, but there's no one, no characters, no best team, no amazing things that's really going to happen. I mean, the West Indies could win, but then we're going to have the excuse, but we left all of our best players at home. Well, we are at home, but at their homes.
Yeah.
So it does kind of like kill the momentum of what had been happening, unfortunately.
And that's the thing. Like, I know they've got a series in New Zealand coming up, but that's only 2 tests. And I think there's some. Maybe, I think there's
T20s and there's
T20s
ODIs.
and maybe ODIs sprinkled around those 2 tests. But then they've got a break, John, and then the T20 World Cup's not till the middle of the year.
Mm.
And then, and I know the IPL's coming up as well, John, but...
Well, the IPL's in the middle of the bloody night.
You've got to sell these games to the public.
Yeah.
The people need a reason to get interested in them. And without these star players, it's difficult to get interested, John.
Absolutely. It starts on Friday. Do you know what time it kicks off?
Yeah, it's a day-nighter, so I think it'll be 2 or 2:30. I think it's a 2:30 Australian Eastern Daylight Time start.
Yeah, right, yep.
For that first ODI at the MCG.
I might chuck it on. And is it televised?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Oh, well,
I think
obviously
it's only on Fox, I believe, John. I don't think Channel 7 have...
KO, yeah.
Yeah, Fox KO.
So I can't watch it in the office because our IP address is blocked by KO and Foxtel because they think we're in Indonesia.
Channel 7 don't have the ODIs or the T20 internationals, John.
So won't be watching, unfortunately. So we'll have an update for what the outcome is for that and the Sunday match on Monday.
Yes, we will.
We'll see if there's any interesting talking points.
And a bit of a look ahead to Tuesday as well.
Yeah, we'll see if there's any interesting talking points, or if Australia's wrapped that up, or maybe the West Indies has wrapped it up. Maybe the West Indies will win tomorrow, and Australia will have to name their best team for Sunday. That'd be interesting, and that'd get everyone engaged. So let's hope that West Indies win one of the next 2.
I mean, I guess the thing is, though, John, they're only going to name... They've named the squad already, so whatever 11 they name, it's going to come out of that squad. Yeah. So we're not going to see Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark or Marsh. Anyway.
That's terrible. Oh, we'll see what happens. Somebody can they get injured and then bring people in for injuries?
I'm not 100%. Maybe I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm trying to. How many are in the squad? 1, 2, 3.
There's 14.
14.
I just saw them.
The chances of there being enough injuries for you to have to bring players in a 3-game series.
6 of us got injured.
Yeah, I don't think you might get 1 or 2 injuries, but you're not going to get.
We've got a
4 or 5.
What
injuries.
is it called? We've got a.
It's only 3 ODIs.
We've got a COVID outbreak. We need to if they lose. Just seeing if there's odds. I don't know if anyone cares about the odds for it, but Australia is 86% chance of winning. Yeah, $1.14. Bet with your head not over it, and West Indies $5.70.
Yeah, no surprise there, John.
Yeah.
Especially without Shamar Joseph.
Exactly. That's the ODIs. We'll talk about it more on Monday and see what, if anything interesting happens, or we'll just be blasting over it. We can move on to the news in cricket and see if you've got some stories. Yeah,
so John, Tim Payne is unhappy with Adam Gilchrist's reaction to the West Indies winning that test match on Sunday. So it's a bit more of a wash-up to come out of that test. So what happened at the end of the match, Adam Gilchrist was seen hugging West Indies legend Brian Lara in the Fox cricket commentary box. I guess, the moment, you can't blame Brian Lara. I mean, the West Indies hadn't won a test in Australia since 1997 before that one. Of course he's going to have an emotional reaction to that. This idea that you're expecting him to be impartial in that situation, well, it's just not going to happen, John. He's a human being and... of course he was going to be emotional in that scenario. Tim Payne also said, look, I get it from a fan's point of view. So I agree with him on that, John. As a fan, and we said it the other day, I felt as though I was glad the West Indies won that test match. I think the test summer needed that result. It needed some unpredictability after Australia won the other 4 tests in the summer. I'm with him on that. I'm with him that he gets it from a fan's point of view. I don't think I don't really blame Adam Gilchrist though, John. I mean, if he felt like he wanted to react that way, well, so what? I mean, Adam Gilchrist is probably thinking about the game in general when he's reacting like that. He probably realises, all right, he's a former Australian Test wicket keeper. But he probably realises in his heart of hearts that that was the result that Test cricket really needed, the shot in the arm that Test cricket needed. And he couldn't help but give Brian Lara a hug. I don't blame Gilchrist because he doesn't have an official role within the Australian team.
I don't understand why all these cricketers get so angry at each other about everything they do. Like, it's fine. Brian Lara and Adam Gilchrist are clearly friends, and even though it sucked, it was a meaningless test as well. Like, I mean, it's awesome that they won, and we have the Frank Worrell Trophy and that kind of crap. But like a meaningless test that no one cares about, and Brian Lara is really emotional. Adam Gilchrist is his friend, and like, well done to him. Like, when I was at the Dragons versus Roosters grand final with my mates. And, my mate Seth, the flower scientist, on the way there, we had an agreement. No matter what happens, we're going to stay till the end, no matter who's winning. Dean Young scores a try. Seth turns around and goes, I'm going home. Handshake, the hug, see you later. Suck it. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't understand why these cricket players, ex-cricket players, get so worked up. Tim Payne doesn't play anymore. No, he doesn't.
No. It's just, I mean...
Why do they hate each other?
Did they really want... And I know Tim Payne used to play for Australia, John, I get that. But, did he really want Australia to beat the West Indies by 300 runs or something? And, or 10 wickets or whatever. Did he really want Australia to... just really hammer the nail into the West Indies and win 2-0 and it to be boring? Or did he want a thrilling finish? All right, the West Indies won. It's their first win in Australia in 27 years, John. Like, give them a break. Seriously, that some people like Brian Lara and Adam Gilchrist just want to enjoy that win. And as you said, John, you looked at the SmartB sort of retrospective odds there. They were paying 60 to 1 at one point. 60 to 1. This was a David and Goliath story, John. This is one of the biggest upsets in the history of Test cricket. I
kind of feel like ex-cricket players have gotten to the point now where they're not very relevant. When they were they need to find something, and they just have to say they're basically all the Nick Kyrgioses of cricket.
Yeah, I don't blame. I don't blame Adam Gilchrist at all. As I say, he doesn't have an official role with the Australian team. He's a former player, but he played a long time ago. And, in the joy of such a great moment for Test cricket, he gave Brian Lara a hug. Yeah. I've got no problem with that. What I do agree with another of the Australian ex-players on, though, Ian Healy, John, he didn't like Pat Cummins' reaction. And this is where I agree. This is where it's an issue. If you're directly involved with the team, like Pat Cummins is as the Australian captain, you shouldn't be revelling in the West Indies winning. You should be, if you're directly involved in the team, the fans can react one way, former players can react one way. But if you're directly involved in the team, you should be extremely embarrassed at losing that game.
Oh, yeah.
And so Ian Healy said, I wasn't that happy, this is his quote, I wasn't that happy with Pat Cummins and how he dealt with it. He's a bit too glowing of the West Indies. I like that bit, but I don't think he's paying enough attention to his side's underachievement. Healy goes on to say, do you reckon they played brilliantly? We only had to chase 216. That means they didn't play brilliantly until the last day. Australia let them into that match big time. Hopefully there was a question after that got Cummins' mind and his thinking on his own team, because that wasn't good enough. And Cummins' quote was mysterious to me, John. He said, as a cricket fan, a test match cricket fan, there's a part of me that was happy to watch. No, Pat, you're not a cricket fan. You're the Australian captain, and you shouldn't have had a part of you that was happy to see that. You should have been humiliated at Australia losing a test that they really shouldn't have lost, John.
I saw one comment on this on the internet where the person said, Pat Cummins is so woke, he's even happy when he loses to the West Indies.
I mean, maybe he should stop worrying about, climate change and Australia Day and every other cause in the world, John, and start worrying about his team not suffering humiliating losses like the one against the West Indies on Sunday.
They've got to go to New Zealand, which we can move on to, with a team that just lost to the West Indies because of their subpar batting.
Yeah, well, there were only... So in 5 tests this summer, there were only 2 individual centuries, John, from the Australian batsman. So that 8-run loss to the West Indies, as we said, one of the biggest upsets in Test history. They collapsed, so they suffered an 8 for 94 collapse in that chase of 216. In the first innings as well, they were 5 for 54 before Usman Khawaja, Alex Carey and Pat Cummins led the recovery. So while they won 4 of the tests out of the 5, they struggled with the bat, John. David Warner and Travis Head were the only 2 individual centurions. I mean, Mitch Marsh did fall twice in the 90s and Steve Smith carried his bat for 91 in Brisbane. But Marnus Labuschagne only made 18 runs in 3 completed innings against the West Indies, John. Those are really damning numbers. Yeah. He only averaged 28.25 for the season, Labuschagne. And Head made a king pair at the Gabba. If you take out his match-winning 119 in Adelaide, his next highest score for the 5 tests was only 40, John. A pretty ordinary summer. So some question marks in that Australian batting order going into that series against New Zealand, John.
We talked about it before that Australia has a whole bunch of players that can like pull Australia's ass out of the fire, basically, and it just seems to be they all just rely on that. Like, it doesn't matter if I got out for like 20 again, because Travis Head's going to pull off a miracle 100. Don't worry, Big Show's coming up. He's going to save us. Steve Smith's still there to bat. Steve Smith still isn't out. They just seem to overly rely on that.
It's a complacency where they go, well, we're up against weak opposition here, so if I don't come to play today, it's all right. Someone else will pick up the slack.
But, if you have 11 players in a team and all 11 players think like that...
well, you end up losing to the West Indies.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what
we know what happens. We saw it last week.
Yeah.
This week. We saw it this week.
On Sunday.
So that's what we've been talking about the whole time. Like, they have this batting order and then... It's okay because it's against the West Indies and it should be easy and so on. Now they've got to go to New Zealand. In New Zealand, play with their batting order that is all out of whack, with Cameron Green not performing at 4 and Steve Smith not performing at 1 and no established Cameron Bancroft.
He did play well, but aside from that innings on Sunday.
One out of 3, so 25% of the time he performs well. No Dave Warner to open for us. It's going to be like a massive difference.
And that's the thing. That's if you're struggling for batting form, those sort of moving green pitches in New Zealand are not where you want to be. If you're trying to find form as a batting,
New Zealand win a lot in New Zealand, man. Like and
not. It's not easy facing those pace bowlers on that swinging pitch.
God, I hope they win. I'm just imagining my Facebook with Paul going on and on and on about
if New Zealand win.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
So that's the
thing.
Stay off Facebook for a few weeks. We can tolerate the West Indies winning a test.
Yeah.
But New Zealand's another...
I can just
they're not in the England category, but they're not far away.
The posts that I've seen just because they lost about how this is supposed to be the best team in the world. Yeah, they did just win a World Cup in India. It's the real worry. It has been since they announced that Dave Warner's replacement was going to be Steve Smith. And still we're talking about Dave Warner. And it's not Cameron Bancroft, who is a domestic player of the year and best opening player in the Sheffield Shield. It's a real worry. It's been a real worry since, well, it's only February 1 now, but it's been a real worry since January.
I mean, I'm worried about... I think... At least with Smith and Khawaja, they're so experienced that, that will hold them in good stead in New Zealand. But I worry about Labuschagne with his poor form going into that tour. And I'm worried about Cameron Green at 4 on those moving green pitches in New Zealand.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good time.
Travis Head, look, I know it was a king pair in the last test. You'd want to give him the benefit of the doubt.
He's Travis Head.
Thought. And, Mitch Marsh will be riding high with confidence after winning that Alan Porter medal. But I'm worried about 3 and 4. Labuschagne completely out of form, and Cameron Green certainly not with his spot cemented there.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. Well, look, again, it's since the end of the Pakistan series. I haven't seen anything in the last 2 tests against the West Indies that makes me confident that the Australian cricket team can go to New Zealand and win a test in New Zealand. Because of their batting. Bowling, yes, possibly. Their bowling is always there.
Yeah, look, I mean, to be honest, John, if you're asking me to pick who's going to win that series in New Zealand, I'd say Australia will, only because of their bowling attack.
Odds on
because
it.
I think Australia's bowling attack is better than New Zealand's, and I think Australia will win the series only based on their bowling attack alone. Not because of their
That's what I mean. Like, they can win on the back of their bowling. Yeah. What I've seen from their batting right now, of course, there's no odds up.
That Australian pace bowling attack are going to be very hard for New Zealand to stop.
But it's going to be it seems like it's going to be quite easy for that New Zealand attack to...
Yeah. As I say, I'm only saying Australia will win the series based, as I said, purely on their bowling attack.
And this is, of course, again, based on the 2 tests we've seen against the West Indies, because the whole entire team's been shaken up. So, have to see what happens. It's a few weeks away. They've got no more tests until then. Hopefully Steve Smith can find form, but we've been saying that since the World Cup.
Yeah, well, hopefully he gets some confidence out of carrying his bat in that second innings against the West Indies and making that 91 not out. I've still got my reservations about how he handled batting with those last couple of batters, Lyon and Hazelwood there, John. You speak to a couple of people who say, it was fine that he gave him 2 balls at the end of the over. I think he should have just given him 1.
Yeah.
You can't really wait till the last ball of the over, John, because they'll bring the field up and stop you from taking the single on the last ball. So I think the second last ball is the one to take the 1 on and back your partner to face 1 ball.
Yep.
And then you take strike at the start of the next over. But anyway, we hope that they get it all together for that New Zealand series, John.
And just lastly, in cricket, because we already talked about Shamar Joseph, retaining a trophy is under question after Aussies retain a Frank Worrell trophy despite humiliating loss. I love the headline. It's always been a thing in cricket.
Yeah, I guess the farcical nature of it was, John, and I'm not sure if you saw the presentation post-match, but after that strong feeling of euphoria that you had for the West Indies after winning that test match so unexpectedly, it just felt really weird for Australia to be on the stage accepting the trophy for retaining it. That felt really strange, and also what makes it more of a farce is the West Indies players were actually seen celebrating on that stage later on after Australia had.
Of course they did.
So you're sort of going, well, who really won this year? No one won. It was a retention of a trophy.
It's always
But
bizarre.
this idea that there's 2 winners, it makes no sense, John.
So first of all, they shouldn't have done 2 tests. You either
do 3 or you do none.
Yeah, it's got to be uneven. It's got to be best of. It can't be whoever wins 2 out of 2 wins.
Like you said, 1's better than 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, this happens in lots of sports as well. It's like when, State of Origin, and they award the trophy, whatever it is, a shield or whatever, to Queensland in Queensland after Queensland has lost the third match, or vice versa to New South, because Queensland won the first 2 or whatever. It's just so bizarre. There's no way to do it well in a 2-match series. Actually, there's no way to do it. If
you're sort of hoping that one team wins 2-0 or 1-0.
Yeah, that's it. That's the only way it's going to work and not be controversial. In a 3-match series, they should award it after the second one, if it's decided, and then not have the third one, because then West Indies can have a party on the stage in the third one, and it makes sense. If there had been 3-match series, Australia won the first 2, we get our trophy, cool, we've won, let's go do the third one, and then West Indies can celebrate on stage after winning the third. But it's always bizarre. It's always a bizarre thing. Oh, you lost. Here's a trophy for winning the series or retaining the series. The biggest issue with the retention of this one is the fact that it was 2 matches. And, it's when sometimes they do 4-match series and it's a retention. It's no. No. It should be 5.
Yeah.
Or 3.
That's
or
the thing.
7.
If you're going to do 4, just make it 3 or 5.
Yeah.
Choose one. Yeah.
3 preferably. I completely agree. It's bizarre and it doesn't make any sense and it's just stupid, and they have there is really simple solutions for it.
That's
really simple. And they just never do it in any sport.
And if you're not prepared to do 3, as you said, do 1.
Yeah, exactly. Just do one.
Yeah.
And then you can win it.
And that's the thing. If you go, but we want another test, we'll get some other team to come out and do one. Get Bangladesh to come out and do one.
Exactly.
Well.
It's just a bizarre thing that they don't really. So like cricket, not even cricket, sport. Managers in general can sometimes be really all the time can be really bizarre, and I always wished throughout my youth that. That media personalities, managers, all that kind of thing will say it's about the fans and never talk to the fans. I always wish they have open forums or something like that. And then they'll do surveys on their multiple choice surveys on their website and not give you all the answers. I remember there was this one survey that was actually on a different website about who should be the on the wing, I think, for State of Origin when it was between Brett Morris and Jared Hayne. And they put Brett Morris, Jared Hayne. And then I was like, well, someone else. What about someone else?
It's sort of patronising, isn't it, to say, it's all about the fans, and then we just take no feedback from the fans. Yeah,
exactly. They should have open forums where they can actually take feedback. The sporting associations could easily just go join the subreddit. And that's honestly the best place to get accurate, what about the fans? Because one of the things that happens on subreddits, on Reddit, that is different to other social medias, right? Reddit mods are over the top a lot of the times. They're fully just there was a thing that came out where actually 10 guys basically are the moderator of all the largest subreddits. It's ridiculous, and they're over the top. But on Reddit, when there is negative sentiment and complaining for no reason, people will respond and give the positives. Like I said, I looked at that dropout rule change and not a single positive comment. Of course, people argued. They argued about, literally, they argued about things like punctuation, statistics. You said he won 11 games and it was actually only 10, that kind of stupid internet nonsense. But no one went, here is a positive reason why they should make this rule change. And the NRL could look at that and go, yeah, we shouldn't do that rule change. There was literally thousands of comments from hundreds and hundreds of people. So it's a good sampling. And
it is a balancing act, isn't it? Because there is that old saying of, well, if you listen too much to the fans, soon you'll be sitting with them. So
you don't want a community project.
It's about getting the balance. You don't want to shut the fans out completely.
Yeah.
But you're not going to let them make all your decisions for you.
If the
you need their feedback. You need to consider their feedback.
If it's 100%... feedback is on one direction from the fans, and you say you listen to the fans and then do the opposite. This is I think I mentioned it before, the guys who changed the name of New Zealand telephone company. I went to a talk with them and they said, as marketing people, ask everyone for feedback and then do what you want, because then everyone will think they've been included. And then say, thanks for the feedback. We've actually ended up going in another direction, but we really appreciate your feedback. The one failing of that is if 100% of the feedback is in one direction and you pick your own anyway. And the retention of the trophy thing is ongoing. Every single year, some sport has a stupid trophy award that not a single fan agrees with, and none of the sporting organisations ever change it. But we listen to the fans. Well, no, you're not listening to the fans in this regard. No one wanted to watch Australia retain this trophy after getting beaten by the West Indies. Nobody.
No. It was quite awkward, actually.
Yeah, it always is, man. It's so thanks for the trophy.
It's like teams who have a 2-0 lead in the Origin series and then they lose game 3 and yet they go on as if they're winners, and it's awkward.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So that's cricket for the week. As I said, on Monday we'll have discussion over the ODIs. We're going to move on to Rugby League, and we're going to do, honestly, guys, it's just our opinion, and we will do 2 this week because, as we said, we've had to catch up. So we're going to do the 11th place Cowboys and the 10th place Eels, but producer John is going to split them into 2 different videos for the playlist. So we're obviously going to do the Cowboys first. So now it's time for, honestly, guys, it's just our opinion, the 2024 preview for the 11th placed Cowboys. So they've had some gains and losses. James Tarmo retired. Man, that guy been around forever. Palmerston North, that's in New South Wales. So they've gained Jake Clifford from Hull FC, lost Thomas McKaylee to Gold Coast. There's Jazihar I can't.
Sorry.
That's quite the name. Yeah, that's a cool name, actually.
Jazire Pua Avasi.
Yep.
I've had a go.
And Viliame Bailey from New Zealand Warriors, but they've lost Peter Hiku, Sylvester Namo, Riley Price, and James Tarmo. Re-signed Tom Duffy, Jake Kaczewski, Jake Granville, Jordan McLean, Jeremiah Nanai, Reece Robson, and Jermaine Tanua-Brown.
Happy to take you through a predicted.
Yeah, that'd be good.
The Cowboys, John. I got Scott Drinkwater at fullback, obviously.
Of course.
Kyle Felt still going around for the Cowboys all these years after his heroics back in the 2015 grand final, John.
This will be his last year, surely.
Well, he'd be getting.
This is his last year of his contract.
Yeah, he's getting towards the end, John. Murray Taulungi on the other wing.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Laybut and Valentine Holmes in the centres. Tom Dearden at 5'8", and Dearden has re-signed for 5 more years, so that's a boost for the Cowboys.
We wanted him at the Dragons, and he stayed with the Cowboys.
It's a pity. Johnny would have been a good pickup for the Dragons. Very good pickup. So Dearden at 5'8", Chad Townsend
of course.
At halfback, of course. Jason Taumalolo and Cohen Hess in the front row. Reece Robson, the State of Origin player himself, John, at hooker. Jeremiah Nanai and Helam Lukey in the back row. Ruben Cotter at lock. Got Jake Granville, Jordan McLean, Griffin Neem, and Luciano Leilua on the bench, John.
Luciano Leilua is a big lad. Mm-hmm.
And just a health check, John. It's just Tom Chester, who's not in my 17 there, but he's the only one that we're sort of waiting on to get fully fit. Expected to be ready to be or available for selection from round 2 onwards with that knee injury.
So they have the 4th easiest draw. They've got 12 games against 2023 top 8 teams, 6 against top 4, 12 against bottom 9, and 7 against the bottom 4. They'll play the Broncos, Raiders, Bulldogs, Sharks, Dolphins, Titans, Panthers, Tigers twice. So obviously in that they play Broncos, Raiders, and Sharks are the top 8 teams twice. Mm-hmm. And of the top 8 teams, they play 2 of the, not the top ones. So it's good for them. They do have a lot of travel at the beginning of the year, and then they stop travelling a lot. They have a lot of periods in Queensland. So it's 5 away trips in the first 7 rounds, while 6 of their last 8 are at home. Not just in Queensland, but at home. And then so they do, 7 rounds with 5 away trips, and then rounds 8 to 12 are all in Queensland. They got 1 5-day turnaround and 10 6-day turnarounds. So pretty easy draw, actually. Like all told, a lot of good rest periods. They've got, like I said, they spent a lot of time in Queensland. So it's the beginning of the season is going to be a little bit hard for them. But then you look at their first 6 games in that 5 away trips in the first 7 rounds. Dolphins away, Knights at home, Dragons away, Broncos away, Titans at home, and Eels away. So they've got a couple of soft ones in there, and then really only the Broncos is the big danger one.
Yeah, one other thing I'd point out, John, I think Semi Valame, he might come into contention for a wing spot. I think him and Kyle Felt will be battling for that wing spot. Obviously, Taulungi's going to be there, John. I mean, he's a State of Origin superstar. So, that'll be interesting whether Valame comes into calculations. John, I think that combination of Dearden and Townsend is going to be crucial for the Cowboys. That they had an off year last year after they made the prelim finals in 2022. I'm really looking at Dearden and Townsend and that combination to get them back where they should be. John, I've got them. I've got them 5th. I think they'll be back. I think if they can stay injury free. I think that's about where they're at. I think 11th was an underachieving season for them last year, and I'm expecting them to. I wouldn't go as far as to say as they're going to contend for the title. I've got them just outside that top 4, sitting in about 5th spot, John.
So I had them higher, and then in the last couple of days I've moved them around a lot because they've been having massive issues with Jason Tamalolo. There's a suggestion that he might be moved on. He signed that 10-year contract that was $10 million or whatever it was, and he's only like 5 or 6 years into it, and they might be booting him. They've changed their captains. They have all this star power like Kyle Felt, Val Holmes, Tom Dearden, Ruben Cotter, but all of them aren't performing, and especially last year, to the best of their ability. Todd Payton, this will be his 4th year in charge, and I would say that this is going to be his last year if he doesn't make the 8, because 2021 it was 15th, obviously first year thing. 2022 3rd, and then 2023 11th. And it was on the back of their superstars not performing to the best of their ability, especially Jason Tamalolo. Now, getting rid of him and freeing him up a lot of salary cap space is all well and good for next year. But this year, it creates a lot of off-field drama and issues.
Yeah, I think for most coaches, John, and there are some exceptions to the rule, but for most coaches, if you miss the top 8 twice in a row, you're pretty much gone.
Yeah, exactly.
For most coaches.
Todd Payton's not exactly an established Wayne Bennett coach.
He doesn't have the Wayne Bennett, Craig Bellamy, Trent Robinson, Ivan Cleary CV, John.
I've actually got them dropping down to 13th.
Okay.
Because, like I said, at the beginning of this, I had them higher. Yeah. I had them actually like 7th. Like you, I thought they would improve on the back of, Townsend, Dearden re-signing that big deal. They'd be excited. But all of this drama in the last couple of days, they always say, we don't pay attention to that. That's up to the back office, blah, 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 blah. But coincidentally, your team seems to drop in form during that. And, they got a bunch of easy games in the beginning, and that could really, if they're still having this drama for the next month and start those games that they should win, they drop games to, the Dolphins or the Dragons or the Titans or something like that, it could really set off a chain reaction that puts them in a negative position for the rest of the year and make them struggle for the rest of the year. So, I've got them at 13th, losing 2 spots, and we'll see how we go. It's our first big differential there.
Yeah, it is, John. I think Jeremiah Nanai, we're hoping that he can fire on all cylinders this year, John. He had 2 suspensions and a shoulder injury. So we're sort of looking at we're looking for a bit more from him as well up front, John. I think that combined with the halves, that's where the blowtorch is for the Cowboys if they're gonna go back into the top 8 this year. That they're really looking to the halves and Nanai, I think, as the key.
They do a co-captain thing, which is always weird to me. I remember there was one team that had 5 co-captains once. I can't remember who it was, but it was just so bizarre. And they dropped both their captains and then put 2 new captains in. So, there's obviously some player drama there between coach and players. They always say, I'll just do whatever's best for the team. But again, it shows on the field. So... this is another one where it's Manly, like we said, Manly we both put at 6th. And if Tom Trbojevic goes down, then both of our tables completely change. The Cowboys, for me, I've got them low, but if they can get over that whole Jason Tamalolo and those players can fire, I would have them back up to the 7th position.
There's a reason why our predictions on the Cowboys are so different, because it could really go either way.
Yeah, absolutely.
They could be 5th. They could be. I think you had them 13th.
13th, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so that's honestly, guys, it's just our opinion for the Cowboys. Now we're going to move on to our, honestly, guys, it's just our opinion, 10th place Eels preview for 2024. So they've gained basically no one, just Morgan Harper from the Sea Eagles and Kelma Tuliagi from the Sea Eagles. Why do the Eels and the Sea Eagles constantly buy each other players? But they've lost... Jake Arthur, Wanga Blake, Nathan Brown, Andrew Davey, Josh Hodgson, Jack Murchie, Mitch Rain. Bunch of retirements in there, obviously. They re-signed Dejan Arce, Dylan Brown, Bryce Cartwright. Don't know why they re-signed him. Matt Dory, Wormu Grieg, Brendan Hands, Jermaine Hopgood, Mitchell Moses, Will Panisi, Sean Russell, Bailey Simonson, and Micah Sevo. Now, out of that, I would say Micah Sevo, Mitchell Moses... They're the ones you really, really want to keep. Dylan Brown's signed to 2031.
It's a long contract.
Yeah, these long contracts are just beyond ridiculous, to be honest.
And, I mean, they're looking for him to get back on track after he was absent. I think it was from rounds 15 to 23 last year with that NRL breach notice.
Yeah.
And you also went into last year with that real cloud over Mitchell Moses. Was he going to re-sign or not? And that seemed to be a real distraction for them going in last year. And I think that really affected them as the season went on. That they didn't seem to recover from that.
Yeah, so they had one of the hardest draws last year, especially the opening, and this year they've got the 11th hardest draw. So they play top 8 teams 12 times, top 4 7, bottom 9 12, and bottom 4 6. But who they play twice, this is where it gets tough. They've got Broncos, Bulldogs, Sea Eagles, Storm, Panthers, Rabbitohs, Roosters, Tigers. So Broncos, Storm, Panthers, and Roosters in there playing twice for the Eels.
Not easy, John.
Yeah, and the start of the season is a little bit easy, which is good. You know, so they can start well. Last year they didn't start well, if I remember correctly, because of a bunch of drama.
Issue.
So they only faced 2 of the top 8 teams in the first few rounds, but it just starts getting worse and worse and worse from there. And their run home is awful. Like it is just atrocious. If we continue on with the theme of last year. But like you got to check their run home. It's just a nightmare, and that could be the deciding factor in their finish. So
they're
going to be playing in their run home. Say from round 19, they've got to play the Titans. Yeah, what do you do? They've got to play the Storm. They've got to play the Warriors in New Zealand. They've got to play the Panthers. They've got to play the Roosters. Then they've got to play the Broncos. And they finish up the season with the Dragons and the Tigers. But that going through...
that round 19 to the third last round.
Yeah. So Storm, Warriors, Panthers, Roosters, Broncos, that could decide their position.
Well, they want to get wins on the board in the early part of the season, John, because they might be struggling towards the back end of that run home. Exactly. I can run you through a 17 for the Eels, John. So Clint Gutherson at fullback, Mike Acevo and Will Penasini in the centres. Sorry, I'll do that again. Mike Acevo and Bailey Simonson on the wings, I should say. Yep. Will Penasini and Sean Russell in the centres. Dylan Brown and Mitch Moses in the halves, of course. Regan Campbell-Gillard and Junior Paulo are the front rowers. Brendan Hands coming in at hooker, John, in place of the retired Josh Hodgson.
Yep.
Ryan Madison and Sean Lane in the back row. Jermaine Hopgood is the lock forward. And the bench, Joe Offahengawi, Bryce Cartwright, your friend, Bryce Cartwright, John.
Yeah, I don't know why.
You don't seem to be a big fan.
Nah, he's average at best. Again, I don't know when average became an insult, but he's average at best.
Wiramu, Greg, and Kelma Tuolagi are the other bench players, John.
Yeah, they got, actually, with their draw, they've got 3 5-day turnarounds and 6 6-day turnarounds as well. So they've got quite a lot of short turnarounds in there. Like with well, I reckon that what you just read out is one of the best teams in the NRL on paper. They should always achieve more, and I think that last year their draw at the beginning of the year was terrible, and they never got over it because of off-field dramas, Mitch Moses not signing, so on and so forth. Their first 6 games this year, we just talked about their last games. Their first 6 games is Bulldogs at home, then a difficult one with Panthers away, then Sea Eagles at home, Tigers at home, Raiders away, and Cowboys at home. So only one super difficult one in there, the Panthers, and then all the rest middle of the road will really show you where the Eels sit. This is Brad Arthur's 11th year in charge. I couldn't believe it when I saw this. He's just been around forever. 53% win percentage overall for Brad Arthur. This not including his 2012 stint as an interim coach.
Yeah.
In that time, he's had 1 wooden spoon, 5 finals appearances, and 1 grand final appearance. So basically, not more than half, slightly less than half appearances in the finals 50% appearance in the finals in his first 10 years, and this is his 11th year. Brad Arthur kind of seems untouchable. He goes through these periods where his job is in danger. In the past 10 years, he's gone through these periods where his job is in danger, and then the Eels next year just smash it. Make a grand final.
Basically, the 2022 grand final appearance brought him a free year last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Free of accountability last year, but now the heat will be back on him if they have a struggling season.
And the players love him, so if they have a struggling season this year, I guarantee you next year they're going to make a grand final. because they seem to play to save his job. It's been a couple of times. There was a year in his tenure where they got pinged for the salary cap from Ricky Stewart's time, so they lost points at the beginning of the season. But yeah, one wooden spoon in that year. That was right at the beginning. Look, they're kind of a hard call. They were thereabouts the whole of last year, even though they did suffer it sometimes. I've got them finishing 7th. I actually, but they got bumped up because I had them finishing 8th, but I got them finishing 7th when I took the Cowboys out of contention.
I'll just run you through a few injury concerns they've got, and then I'll give my prediction as well. So, yeah, Warimu Greg has a foot injury, but he should be all right, John. He shouldn't miss any football. Clint Gutherson's battling a bit of a knee problem, but he should be right to go for round 1. Dejan Arce, a finger injury, but same deal. Should be right for round 1. Makahesi Makatoa has a pec injury, but we're expecting he won't miss any footage on. Junior Paulo's got a bit of a toe issue, John, but again, round 1 should be back. And a couple of players who are going to be sitting out the whole season, John, with ACL injuries. Arthur Miller-Stephen and Richard Panasini as well, John.
Gone for the season. Well, they weren't in their top 17 anyway, first 17.
Yeah, they weren't, no. But,
sad for them,
it takes away a bit of their depth anyway. Yeah, John, I'm actually, I've got it exactly the same as you. I've got them 7th. I think they'll return to the finals. As I said before, going into that last season with that Mitch Moses contract distraction, and that Dylan Brown breach notice, how he was missing for 8 games late last season. I think those distractions in the halves really contributed to them having a poor season last year. So, yeah, I think they'll be back in the 8, John. I've got them 7th, and that should be enough to keep Brad Arthur in his job for a bit longer, John.
So that's honestly, guys, it's just our opinion. Daily double for the 11th and 10th place. Mm-hmm. Next week will be 9th. Ooh, we're almost at the top 8. Who's going to drop out of the top 8? Yeah. 9th is the Rabbitohs. I reckon that'll be a long one because it's all just going to be 20 minutes talking about Latrell.
Yeah.
Jack Whiten.
I got a feeling that's going to get a few views on
100%. A lot of anger. Let's move on to the rugby league news. And the big news that I heard this morning is Cameron Smith has quit as the Queensland assistant coach. Did we get a citing insert reasons here?
Yeah, so the quote from Cameron Smith is, "This year I've decided to coach at grassroots level at the Currumbin Eagles. I feel it's really important to get back to grassroots level because that's where our next generation of players come from." It's a bit mysterious to me, John. You sort of feel like there could be more than meets the eye on this one.
Yeah, I know that the core, Cooper Cronk, Cameron Smith, Billy Slater did have some falling outs and stuff like that. But it could be that they're preparing him for taking over at Melbourne. That was always the suggestion for what the plan would be. I know there's always been talk about Jason Riles taking over, and that's why he didn't take the Dragons job. But it could be like they've sent him off to be a head coach of a lower grade to dip his toe in the water, see if he actually likes it, and then start moving up through the ranks. Could be.
It could be. As I say, I think there's more than meets the eye, and it could be what you're talking about, John. He'll continue his media commitments with Channel 9 as well.
It could also be that he took that chance because there were some issues there. But there was always rumblings about like Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk, Smith.
I think there are obviously issues between Smith and Cronk.
Yeah.
And I think there were some issues between Slater and Smith as well. So... Well, this could be some flow on from that.
Yeah.
We don't know that. We're just speculating. We don't know anything. But to me, it just seems like, you're not going to be assistant coach at Queensland to go back to the grassroots? It just the pieces of the puzzle just don't really fit for me there, John.
They've called in perennial Cameron Smith replacement Matt Ballon to replace him.
Yeah, Matt Ballon's coming in, so Josh Hannay and Jonathan Thurston will also be Slater's assistants this year, John. Ballon's previously worked with the Queensland team on game day under Slater. and he coached the Maroons under-19s team last year. So,
Yeah.
a strange one, John.
Yeah,
You really
out
do
of
feel
nowhere.
like you're not being told the full story here.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Cameron Smith is a bit of a protected species because he's basically everyone in the media's friend. So you never really get the full story. Like, nobody really knows why Cooper Cronk and Cameron Smith fell out. And I've heard some wild speculation in the rumours, from we've got viral SMSs.
Did a lot of it, I think, when Cronk went to the Roosters, I feel like that got Smith's nose out of joint.
Yes, I had those ones, and I had some other ones about love entanglements and
right.
just all nonsense. It was just and then you'll get the same kind of thing with this. You'll never, but I'm sure I'll start getting SMSs and stuff like that, and see internet rumours pop up any minute. On Origin, so we did mention on Monday that Jack Whiten is going to unretire from rep football, and it may be related to a falling out with Brad Fittler, apparently.
Yeah, so Brent Reid and Michael Chamis have made that suggestion, John, that they think that the reason Whiten retired from rep football was because of a falling out with Fittler. That may have been, you might remember it back in 2022, John, New South Wales got beaten in the first game, but Whiten was regarded as the best player in that game. And then he got COVID and he couldn't play in game 2. And then New South Wales won game 2. And then when they came to game 3, they thought, well, we've just won. Well, we're not going to change a winning team. And they left Whiten out of game 3.
Yeah, big mistake. Big mistake.
And then they ended up losing the series anyway, John. I guess that was a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario for Fittler, though. I mean, if they had have brought Whiten back for game 3 and then lost it, people would have said, well, why'd you change a winning team?
Yeah.
And then they ended up deciding to stick with that winning team from game 2, and then they ended up losing it, and people go, well, why didn't you pick Whiten? He was the best player in game 1. So, it was this damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario they were in, John, but it seems like maybe Whiten got his nose out of joint not being picked for game 3 that year, and he's just gone, well, stuff this, I'm not playing under Fittler. But now it seems as though now that Maguire's taking over from Fittler, Whiten could certainly be in the frame for a rep return in 2024, John.
Do you really want a player who chucks a tanty because he doesn't get his own way in your team? That's what Michael Maguire has to ask himself. Doesn't matter how good he is.
I guess it's probably going to depend a lot on what his options are.
Yeah, that's true.
This season, John.
Who are the best New South Wales centres now? I've got no idea.
Well, that's the thing. Do you go with
Matt Burton?
Do you go with Tom? Tom Turbo. He just can't. I mean, if he's fit, you got to pick him, John. But he just can't seem to.
Yeah, but who's going to be? Who would be the fullback?
This is the thing. Surely he'd be fullback. There's question marks over Tedesco at fullback. So if Tom Turbo's fit and there's a question mark over Tedesco, well, you're probably looking at Tom Turbo as the fullback.
Well, yeah, Tedesco should. To be honest, Tedesco should retire from rep football, and that takes it out of Michael Maguire's hands. Then Tom Trbojevic can be picked, and then Jack Whiten can be a centre if he's the best centre.
But then you got these issues around Latrell as well. Like, you want him in the frame in the centres, but he gets distracted and he gets injured and he gets suspended. Well, there's always some issue.
We'll see with the Rabbitohs. Surely Jack Whiten's going to play centre at Rabbitohs, and then you have Latrell Mitchell at fullback. But Latrell Mitchell's best position is centre. That's
the thing. If you ask me, John, I don't think Tedesco gets picked. If you're asking, we can only go on right now. It is February. But we can only go on what we know now. So if you're asking me, I guess you'd leave Tedesco out, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. That's why he should retire and take it out of everyone's hands.
And so if Tom Trbojevic is fit and firing, well, he's the fullback.
Yeah, otherwise, what are you going to do? Pick Tedesco on the bench and name him as captain? No one would ever do that except New South Wales.
So then you're probably looking at, Latrell, again, assuming that he's fit and he's focused and firing, you're probably looking at, let's assume all players are fit and firing.
Yep.
Tom Trbojevic is your fullback, in my view. Latrell's in one centre position and Jack Whiten's in another centre position.
And then the wings are Adokar and Jared Hayne.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that'll be happening.
I don't know. But,
yeah, look,
if he's going well, and if he's going well for the Rabbitohs, as I said, we're going to do Rabbitohs preview next week where we think they'll finish. But if Jack Whiten's obviously going to be a key to that. And if he's doing well at centre, then hopefully he doesn't retire because New South Wales, we need to win.
I mean, I guess we sort of think, do Stephen Crichton come into consideration as well, John? Does Matt Burton come into consideration in the centres?
You got to see how they go at the Bulldogs.
So if everyone's fit, let's say everyone's fit and firing, John, do you go... I think we probably have to leave Burton out of there at this point.
Absolutely.
So does Stephen Crichton get the nod over Latrell or Jack Whiten in the centres at this point in time?
What side does he play? 4.
I think he's a 4, yeah.
And
so
Latrell can play either side.
So you basically...
It also depends on who the wingers are.
If Latrell's firing and focused, he's in. If Tom Trbojevic is focused and firing, he's the fullback. So you're basically going Stephen Crichton or Whiten.
Yeah, and actually it might depend a lot on the wing they pick as well, because if Crichton plays the same side as Addo Carr and the Crichton-Addo Carr combination is working really well at
That's
club
assuming
level.
Crichton plays in the centres at the Bulldogs and doesn't play fullback.
And then you go... Well, yeah, we'd put them both on that side or whatever. But I never know which side anyone plays. Like, never in my entire life have I known.
That's the thing. Maybe you sort of go, does Crichton have more of a case than Whiten? Given, as you said before, Whiten's this player who sort of wants to play, sort of doesn't want to play.
But if he doesn't get his way, he has a tanty and retires. So, yeah, that's like...
So you just judge it on... You just look at the form of Crichton and the form of Whiten going into a game.
Yeah.
And you make a judgment.
Yeah. And there could be somebody else. I don't know. You just don't know. Chuck Nico Hines there. But more rep news, because, that's what we've got to talk about now. So Wayne Bennett has expressed interest in taking over the New Zealand coaching role. He has... in the past been a consultant, both when they won the 2008 World Cup and the following Four Nations, whatever year that was. He was the consultant. And again, I go back to they had a very specific spine at those matches as well. But Peter V'landers has got something to say about it. I don't know why.
I just thought it was a mysterious comment, John. So this is V'landers' quote. He told Triple M's Rush Hour the following. He said, "I don't know why Wayne wants to get on a loser. He's normally a winning coach. Why would he want to go and coach against Australia?" The reason I found it strange, John, was that does he not remember that in the recent Pacific Championships, New Zealand beat Australia 30-0 in the final to win the championships?
Probably doesn't.
It's just a strange timing comment, John. After the most recent international tournament, New Zealand beat Australia in the final. So how do you then turn around and call New Zealand losers compared to Australia? That's what I don't understand. I don't understand that. And Wayne Bennett, he's not going to have a job after this year. This is his last year as Dolphins coach. So he said before, John, he basically wants to just keep coaching forever. He's entitled to go and look for a job with New Zealand. He's a free agent. I find that's a stupid comment from V'landers, John. Absolutely ridiculous comment.
It's bizarre. And honestly, I'd say V'landers probably doesn't remember. Was he even ever aware, to be honest? Because no matter, the guy is obviously a good administrator, but I just don't. He's still the head of New South Wales Racing and stuff like that. So he's split between different jobs, and there has been multiple times in the past few years that he's been in charge that he's had slips of the tongue around rugby league stuff.
You got the boss of the game calling New Zealand losers when New Zealand won the most recent international tournament.
In dominant fashion.
Beat Australia in the final 30-0 as well. So I think it's a careless comment. It's a ridiculous comment, in my opinion, John.
It's honestly, I just think he probably doesn't remember, and that's like a terrible thing.
7 NRL premierships for Bennett, of course.
Yeah, of course.
A decorated
and as I said, he was the consultant when Stephen Kearney coached the...
Yes. The 2008 World Cup win.
And the there was a Four Nations 1 or 2 years afterwards that they also won, and that was and now some news about both our clubs.
Yes.
Your best friend Raymond Fatala Mariner has been released by the Bulldogs. This was so funny because I saw pop up on my Instagram feed a Bulldogs statement, and then a minute later when I refreshed, a Dragon statement.
So they're in cahoots, I think, John.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll go at this time, you go at this time.
Fatala Mariner has been released by the Bulldogs and joined the Dragons in 2024-2025. Dragons squad is now taking a little bit more shape. I don't think he will be a linchpin that changes my opinion. The Dragons will get the spoon. But that does leave he's the last player from the 2021.
Yeah, so that was the year Phil Gould joined the club, John, in 2021, and now there are no Bulldogs players from that 2021 top 30 squad left. So Phil Gould, essentially, in the space of 2.5 years, has completed his roster overhaul.
It's the fastest roster turnover in the history of rugby league, and there is no way that anyone at any point now from the Bulldogs can even mention failings on the field as part of a salary cap issue.
So there's no excuses now for the Bulldogs. There's absolutely no excuses. The new general manager essentially has completely cleaned out the squad and has got the squad he wants. He's put it together in 2.5 years. So now we go, right, no more excuses, Phil Gould. We need to start seeing results this year.
All right, they're going to be, what did we say? I can't remember. 11th or 12th this year.
Well, I mean, we need to see, again, they finished 15th last year. We need to see some noticeable improvement.
Yep.
If it's 11 or 12 and they win, say, about 9 or 10 games, well, that's noticeable improvement.
Yeah,
and that's what we need to see this year.
Yeah. So, as I said, I don't think he's obviously going to be a starter in the starting squad. The team that you named 5 episodes ago or whatever it was has now changed.
The Dragons.
Yeah.
So where do you have him as a starter, do you?
For sure. He's a ex-club captain and, starting back rower.
Yeah, he's a very capable player, John. I'm not sure why he had a fallout at the Bulldogs. I'm not sure what happened there.
He was definitely part of that players.
The rebel group who didn't like the hard training.
Yeah.
He was the club captain. So it's just very interesting how it all fell apart. You go from being appointed the club captain to just banished from the club.
So, a lot of people say, that's his job to go and tell the coach that this is how the players are feeling. And he copped it for it. But, they said they let go of everybody. So they had like 14 players or something they had lost for this year, and that's like their 15th. So all of those players that aren't buying in are gone, and he was the captain that didn't buy in, and now the Bulldogs have to improve.
Yes.
And as another former player, not of the Bulldogs, but of the Rabbitohs, Latrell Mitchell number 1, Greg Inglis, because Latrell Mitchell is Greg Inglis too, has been working at the West Tigers.
Yeah, according to reports, he's been hired in a mentoring role at the Tigers. He was spotted in the West Tigers training kit. He looked very schmick in that nice orange and black kit, John. So he's been brought there to help young gun fullback Jareem Buller, John, in a mentoring role. According to reports, he's assisting Buller with the pressures of being a rugby league player. The Tigers power brokers have said that Inglis isn't a part of the club's coaching staff or in the football department there, John. So it's a very sort of niche, specific mentoring role here that he's got with Buller. Of course, Buller's re-signed a mammoth, and it says on this report I'm looking at, John, an extension. But as we've said, there's no such thing as a contract extension. One contract ends and you sign a new contract. Anyway, he's contracted until the end of 2027, John.
Okay.
Reportedly set to pocket between $2.7 and $2.8 million on that contract. And I think he's got the final year of his contract is, I think there's an option there that him or the club can take up. Yeah, so this, I guess the Tigers continuing to sort of overhaul their hierarchy, John. We know the entire board's gone. The CEO, Justin Pascoe, is gone. The chairman, Lee Hadjipantelis, is gone. David Nofaluma's gone. Shane Richardson's taken over as interim chief executive, John, and I think maybe that's got a lot to do with Inglis taking this role, that close relationship between the former Rabbitohs chief executive Richardson and the former Rabbitohs premiership winning fullback Inglis.
They also sacked Shane Richardson's toe, if you'll remember. They got rid of that.
Yeah. Well, that was a big story, wasn't it, John?
Exactly.
We were all very concerned about Shane Richardson's toe.
I hope the Tigers go well. You've got them last. I've got them jumping up to, I think it was 11th, 15th. Yeah, not 11th, 15th. And, you know, it is hard to be a young sports star, especially one like a fullback in the West Tigers, and having Greg Inglis there to mentor him is good.
Yeah, with no Jerome Luai, John, I think if they can just avoid the wooden spoon, I think they've done well this year, and then they'll be hoping to push up the ladder once Luai joins the party in 2025.
Yep, that's Rugby League for the week. We have an AFL news this week, surprisingly. Rory Sloane suffers a worrying injury setback. Oh.
Yeah, unfortunately, John, the former Adelaide Crows captain has been forced to undergo surgery on a detached retina in his right eye. It's a nasty injury,
God,
John.
that is.
The Crows made that revelation on Wednesday. He went under the knife on Tuesday night. He also had a similar procedure back in 2021 as well. So, it's terrible luck on the injury front for Sloane. So the surgery's been a success and he's now in recovery. Adelaide's high-performance manager Darren Burgess said in a statement. He'd signed a one-year contract extension for 2024.
Yeah.
John, it's expected to be his last season. He is getting on. He's 33 now. There's real question marks. I don't have an exact time frame here, John, but there's real question marks over how long he's going to be out for, how much of this last season he's actually going to be playing for, John. He played every game in 2023 after he came back from a knee reconstruction the year before. So he's played 255 games across a 15-year AFL career, two-time club best and fairest winner, stepped down from the captaincy in 2022. So, John, it does look as though he's maybe not going to get on the field that much this year. Obviously, fingers crossed for Rory Sloane that he can have the send-off he deserves in 2024.
Yeah, that's sad. Detached retina is pretty annoying and very dangerous. I believe they can detach again as well from knocks, so he's got to be careful, and hopefully he can get back on the field and get a send-off. Otherwise, it's just going to be one of those Buddy Franklin situations where you get to do a lap of honour at the last home game or something. So
good luck to him.
Very good luck to him. Nothing in combat sports. We're still waiting for a main fight announcement for UFC 300, and the next big card is the 18th of February. But in other sports news, now we know why Novak Djokovic lost to Yannick Sinner.
Yeah, John, it just continues. As I've said a number of times before about Djokovic. Whenever you feel like there's a reason to like him, it just gets brought undone, John. Just these excuses being made. So it's now coming out, there's reports coming out that Djokovic battled illness throughout the tournament. And it's come out that, there's quotes from a Serbian journalist that have been doing the rounds on social media. It says that the quote is he got a fever the night before the semi-final. The reporter said something similar to what Alexander Zverev had. He was sick for 3 weeks and then had a relapse. That's why he played so badly in the first two sets. You could see he was so weak and couldn't do it. He couldn't play well in those conditions. He didn't want to go to the doctor so journalists wouldn't bother him and make a fuss. Now, as always with these things, John, I know it's a reporter saying that and not Djokovic saying that, but you do wonder, well, where has this story come from?
Yeah,
has it been leaked out by someone in the Djokovic camp wanting that to be out there? You'd have to think it has, John. I mean, who else could it have come from, John? Only he knows that he's sick.
A couple of things. Get vaccinated, mate. And also, that doesn't explain why Sinner has beat him, 3 out of 4 times or something.
That's the thing. It wasn't just the Australian Open. Sinner beat him at the ATP finals at the end of last year and at the Davis Cup at the end of last year.
Yeah, so I think it was 3 out of 4. 3 out of 5, something like that. So, You know, how do you explain away the other times? Sinner just beats him. That's it.
Yeah, again, it's come from a reporter, but it makes you wonder, John. You go, well, this has to have either come from Djokovic or someone close to him in his camp.
Of course.
They wanted the narrative out there that he wasn't 100%. And I don't think you can't be saying that, John. If you're taking the court, and this goes for any sport, in tennis, if you're taking the court, in football, if you're taking the field, once you take the field or the court, well, you're judged on people are right to assume that you're 100% and you're ready to perform. If you're not right, well, don't play. Withdraw from the event. But once you decide to take the court, no, you're going to be judged on your performance. And people are fair enough to assume that you're 100% fit or close to it, close enough to it to be able to play. And if you're in that state, well, then you're judged on your performance. You can't play and then get beaten and then use the illness as an excuse afterwards.
Yeah, there's a saying that there's not a single professional athlete in the world who isn't injured in some way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sure, Sinner was carrying some sort of an injury.
Exactly. And if you remember, Michael Jordan actually is famous. He had the flu for one match in one of the rings that they won, and he went out and scored like 40 million points and 400 rebounds, and like they suspect he was poisoned the night before and stuff. It was a documentary. So it's just an excuse. You know, there's two. I always like to say to my kids, it's a reason if you tell me before, and it's an excuse afterward. Excuses are never good, and that's an excuse that if as you said, the reporter gets it from somewhere. He definitely got it from, most likely got it from Djokovic's camp, and it's just an excuse now, mate.
I mean, it's he's won the Australian Open 10 times. You can't win it every year.
Yeah.
He's won more Grand Slam titles than any other player in the history of the game with 24. Sometimes you need to just tip your hat to the guy who played better than you on the day, and that's what Jannik Sinner did in that semi-final against Djokovic, John. He should not be using excuses. Just say, well done, Jannik Sinner, give him full credit and move on. Don't be making excuses.
Move to your next one, the French Open.
Yeah. You can't win them all, Novak. You've won plenty of them. You just got to live with it sometimes when you get beaten.
Yeah. And then further on tennis, Andy Murray has had another argument with a reporter. I always love when he snaps back at reporters, to be honest.
Yeah, he's quite thin-skinned, John. So
makes me laugh so much.
A BBC Scotland reporter tweeted, he's yet to win a match in 3 tournaments this year. He's now gone out in the first round of 6 of his past 7 matches. I'm not sure if this was a tweet, but this was either in the report or a tweet, John. So the journalist has said this. In his past 9 matches, Murray, one of the greatest competitors in the modern history of the game, has won just 1. At what point does bravely soldiering on start to damage his legacy? Murray reacted on Twitter. Tarnishing my legacy, do me a favour, he said in response. I'm in a terrible moment right now, I'll give you that. Most people would quit and give up in my situation right now, but I'm not most people and my mind works differently. I won't quit. I will keep fighting and working to produce the performances I know I'm capable of.
Calm down.
But he didn't really address what the reporter... The reporter's saying that by going on too long, he's tarnishing his legacy, and then he's gone on about how he's not going to quit. So he hasn't addressed that directly in the response.
To be honest, if I was Andy Murray, I would fully dive deep into it and say, mate, my legacy is actually forever going to be number 4 when Federer, Nadal and Djokovic were playing. That's his legacy. He can't tarnish. Andy Murray, actually, out of everyone in the entire history of sport, can't actually tarnish his legacy because his legacy is that. If you think about it, if Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer didn't exist, Andy Murray probably would have been the greatest tennis player in the history of the world. That's his legacy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he would have been the best player ever, but he certainly would have won a lot more majors.
Yeah, that's his legacy though. Because there was the big 4. And compared to the other guys, Andy Murray never won anything. What is it? 4 majors, right?
3 majors.
3 majors.
But 11 major finals. So he won 3 out of 11. Before Ivan Lendl took over as his coach, he couldn't win a major. Yeah. Ivan Lendl took over and taught him how to win majors.
That's his legacy. His legacy is actually he had to be fourth fiddle to those three guys. Like he can't. That doesn't matter how many times he loses. If he plays until he's 60 and keeps losing, he'll always be remembered as that guy that was fourth in the world behind the three best tennis players probably of all time. You know, like
they are. You'd have to say, they are. Like they're the three. They've won the three most majors in the history. In
some other parallel universe, those three guys weren't there, and Andy Murray won 44 Grand Slams.
So he lost that first round against Thomas Etcheverry, John.
Yeah, against nobody.
And then after the Australian Open, he returned to the court to face Benoit Paire at the Open Sud de France, where he again lost in the first round, John. So he's 0-3 to start the year. I mean, John, there is this issue, though, of young fans now are not going to remember the Andy Murray that we remember, who, again, won 3 major titles, was one of the best players in the world. They're going to remember this player who's, you know, sort of ranked around the 50 mark, who is not really making any dent in these major tournaments, John.
Yeah, that's we discussed that before. Like, that's the actual tarnishing of the legacy, but... You know, those young whippersnappers will always have us olders will go, yeah, but he was the fourth best player in the world and he was behind these three guys.
I just think, John, he's personally, my view of it is Andy Murray's better off just ignoring those tweets.
Yeah, but I also
can't help himself.
I also think that he should have stayed retired. But yeah, he should just ignore those tweets.
Yeah, well, he's retired. He retired 5 years ago, and he should have stayed that way, John.
That's it for other news. Onto our social media blower-uppers. The General gave us a response to our comments, our analysis of his comment in episode 43. He said, I wasn't saying Manly's 2011 comp doesn't count. Compare it to Penrith in 2021, who lost the first week, had to go the long way and play 3 physically grueling grand finals just to win it. Halfback busted shoulder, fullback broken foot, won it with a stalled attack on the back of gritty defence. They're the two different ends of the spectrum as far as the difficulty of premierships won over a final series in the modern era. Manly effectively weren't challenged. They got the dream finals run. That's just how the cookie crumbles, man. Like, there's nothing... Manly can't do anything about that.
They can only beat who's put in front of them.
Sometimes people get easier grand finals runs and sometimes they don't.
That's the thing, John. You might remember that West Tigers 2005 premiership. Now, there were a number of teams who seemed to cop a lot of injuries that year. Going into that season, the Bulldogs were favourites. They won it the year before. They got battered by injuries that season, John. The first half of the season, I think it was there was one half of the season where their forwards were out injured and the other half, their backs were all out injured. They just got obliterated by injuries that year. Some of the other teams who had really good sides that year, like I think the Broncos got hammered by injuries that year as well.
2005.
Yeah, there were a number of and then the Broncos won it the next year. So the Bulldogs and Broncos won at either side of that Tigers 2005 premiership.
Oh, is that the year that the Eels got the minor premiership and the Dragons were second?
Yes.
And the Tigers beat.
Neither of them made the grand final.
Yeah, it was. That was it's really funny because one of my friends, Claire, her birthday is in September and it falls in footy season, and in one of the years she was for me to attend her birthday party, I always insisted on having a TV, and I had to watch the Dragons lose that year, 2005. Sucks so bad. Get knocked out in the prelim. And that's it. Like, it's just 2005 is a perfect example. The two best teams didn't make the grand finals. Some of the other best teams lost all of their players in defence, and then Tigers went through and won the grand final against the Cowboys.
Yeah, and there were people who I'll be honest, John, and I'm going to cop some heat from West Tigers fans on social media, but there are a lot of people who saw that as a Stephen Bradbury premiership, that 2005 one for the Tigers. Yeah, it was the Bulldogs. I think they had the first half of the season, all their forwards were out injured. Second half of the season, all their backs were out injured. Once the forwards came back, all the backs got injured. So they were just... And again, if you look at previous year, Bulldogs won the premiership. The year after, 05 and 06, the Broncos won the premiership.
Yeah.
I think those two had better sides on paper than the Tigers in the year the Tigers won it.
They definitely did.
But they both got hammered by injuries, John.
And, you know, I'm a Dragons fan, so 2010, I always cop the only reason you won is because Melbourne wasn't in it. You know, because that was the year they couldn't play for points.
That's the thing. I don't think any team wins a premiership by accident. And I'm saying that some teams got injuries, but the West Tigers still had to go out and win that premiership. They beat the Dragons, John, who were a good side that year.
Yeah, they had
and then they beat the Cowboys in the grand final.
They had the 7 of the best players in the league. That was back in there was that 2005 State of Origin team that was all Roosters and Dragons and Andrew Johns. You know, so yeah. Also, the General on the Australia Day post. I like Abdo. He's a good operator, but he's nauseatingly PC. So referencing the NRL.
It's a common problem. Too many administrators are too PC in sports.
Yeah, 100%. Just stay out of it and talk about sport.
We talked about Cricket Australia before. Too much PC nonsense going on, John.
TikTok Watcher Not Poster has returned on the short dropouts. Discussing the short dropouts. A certain team who won back-to-back comps had the best data analysis and never did a short dropout. So is that the Roosters? I think that's the Roosters.
Surely couldn't have been about the Roosters, because if he was talking about Penrith, he'd be saying 3P.
Yeah.
So it'd have to be.
And
it
can't be talking all the way back to the Broncos. Was the one before?
No. It'd be the Roosters, because if it was the Panthers, he'd be saying.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things. Like the short dropouts become a big thing this year. 2023. We saw it more and more, especially at the back end of the season. More and more. And now they've made the rules so to make more short dropouts, and nobody thinks it's a good idea.
I mean, that's the thing. As I said before, you're taking away, the deterrent there. So, I mean, all these dropouts are going to be short dropouts now. And so what you're starting to go, the repeat set now. I mean, it's not going to be what it used to be, forcing the line dropout now.
Yeah, you don't want to force line dropouts anymore. There's a high chance of them getting the ball back, or you having to defend within 10 metres. I mean, attack within 10 metres where you don't score tries.
So you've got this new rule that means, well, why go for a repeat set? You've also got the 7 tackle rule if you kick it dead. So there's really of getting 7 tackles if you take the restart from the 20.
The best.
So then you're sort of going, well, why are teams going to be kicking into the in goal? Like, what do teams have out of kicking into the other teams in goal?
Outcome now seems to be to get if you're in the 10, get tackled on their 6th tackle and hand over within the 10.
Yeah,
that's your best possible outcome, actually. Because if you go for a repeat set, they're gonna do a short dropout.
So you may as well just go for the try. And if you don't get it and you hand over, well, so be it.
Yeah, you start. The set starts from within the 10. Yeah. Jotes 364 on short dropouts. If it's on the full, is the play from where it was kicked? Otherwise, couldn't they kick out miles downfield to gain advantage by only being 10 metres back? So if they kicked out at the 5 metres and now have to defend from the 15 metres instead of the team catching on the 5 and not getting tackled until maybe the 25. I didn't really get that, sorry. Yeah, but Dylan Emerton responded and said, if it's a play the ball on the 40, so attacking team have 60 metres to the try line. I still don't.
It's a bit tricky to make sense of all that.
Yeah, sorry, man. Like, if you want to clarify what you mean.
I'll post another report to us. Yeah.
And then on the Gold Coast preview on TikTok, by the way, Lathan T has tagged his mate Benny Hawkins and said, I can't handle the Fafita slander. Sorry, bro. David Fafita was supposed to be the best forward in the world, and he's just been quiet since he moved to the Titans.
Just calling it as you see it. I think you said that, didn't you?
Yeah. So it's just been quiet. Like, he hasn't gone to those great lengths of being the best forward in the world.
You're just calling it as you see it, John. That's why we're here. We're not here to make friends with these players.
Exactly. So housekeeping to finish up for today. Don't forget to sign up to SmartB to get tip of the day. You can also sign up and use the SmartBook, where you can add your preferred teams, players, so on and so forth to your SmartBook, and then get notified when they're playing for the day. And then you can also win 2 tickets to Subversion. did do the draw for the corporate box, but I left the name on my computer at home. So I'll announce it on Monday and put it up on social. SmartB racing update starts tomorrow, so if you're into racing, watch out for that. We'll do social posts and stuff like that. Then if you want to know more information, follow at SmartB app on all of the socials in the world. Have a good weekend, Dan. It's Thursday.
I'm off on a Bucks weekend on the weekend, John. So hopefully I come back in one piece on Monday.
Just a bit dusty. And we'll see you on Monday, producer John.